to record this right now. Okay, so we've had a motion, we've had a second. I believe then we vote on it. I think actually it's just accepted, but all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, consent agenda is approved. And now we will go to, sharing is paused. Now we will go to the minutes. January minutes. There we go. Oh no, I'm sorry. Those are already approved because of the consent agenda. Well, okay. And as we go through there, I'm going to this is very quick. I'm going to turn this over to Iraida, and Iraida will be presenting our presentation today. So Iraida, it is all yours.
Thank you, Teresa. I am getting ready.
That one.
All right. Can you see my screen with the first slide of the presentation up?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, fantastic. And thank you everyone for being here today. I appreciate you being at this meeting and being willing to listen to this presentation on the system performance measures. I will be covering Racine's Continuum of Care system performance measure data that was submitted to HUD. The deadline was February 28th. I think we made that deadline even earlier. We submitted this data on February 22nd. So my name is Iraida Vazquez. I am the HMIS manager for the Racine Continuum of Care and oversee coordinated entry, both in Racine and in the staff for Madison Dane Continuum of Care. I'll start with talking about what is the system performance measures and what is a system. As we all kind of think of a system, we know systems usually have many parts doing many different things. And the intention is that they work together to have a common goal. And our focus is viewing the homeless response as a coordinated system of homeless assistance options, as opposed to homeless assistance programs or funding sources operating independently. And so we look at the measures of performance as a coordinated system, and we analyze those performances not just for specific projects or project types, but also want to make sure that we're identifying if there are gaps or needs in our systems. The opening doors indicated the strategic plan that we transform homeless services to a crisis response system that prevents homelessness and rapidly returns people who are experiencing homelessness to stable housing. And so these are where the measures came from. And in the Hearth preamble, it was quoted that we established a federal goal of ensuring that individuals and families, so all people who are become homeless, return to permanent housing within 30 days. So that is the goal within the creation of the system performance measures on the federal level. When we're looking at measuring progress, the Hearth Act did identify 7 metrics, or measures, I should say, and within the measures, there are several metrics within them. And we call those our HUD system performance measures. The data sources do come primarily from the HMIS system, and that data gets uploaded into HDX. There is one measure in which it comes from point in time count. So it is not derived just from HMIS. It is derived from the point in time street outreach count, which includes clients served in January, the fourth Wednesday of January each year. Includes those who are served in domestic violence shelters and those who are not in emergency shelters and are unsheltered on that night. So the date range for the reporting period that we're going to talk about will be October 1st to September 30th of each reporting cycle. So the current cycle right now that we're looking at in the submitted report will be October 1st of 2021 until September 30th of 2022. There are 7 measures. Only 6 of the measures are measures that we're able to report on. Measure number 6 you will see is missing from this list, and that is because we and no CoC within the nation has been identified as a high performing community, meaning that they met that metric within the HUD goal of ending homelessness and being able to use prevention category 3 homelessness to be able to be funded with HUD CoC program funds. And so the first measure that we're going to talk about will be the length of time persons experience homelessness, both in average and in median. Then we'll look at the number of clients who return to homelessness from a permanent destination. So if they left 2 years prior to that reporting period to a permanent destination, how many of the clients are recurring into homelessness? And then we'll look at the number of persons homeless, both for the point in time night in January, which includes all persons that we were able to either find on unsheltered through our unsheltered count, and those who were in shelters and transitional housing programs within Racine's geographic boundaries, which is the county. Measure 4 is included in system performance measures, though I am not going to cover that measure. It is the only measure within our system performance that looks at only a funding source, HUD specific CoC program funds. It's a very minimum amount of clients in those programs, and it's looking at whether income from employment or non-employment income has increased for the participants either staying in that program, in those, I think it's 5 programs, or while they're in the program or when they leave the program. We do have that data. It can still be supplied. It is reviewed at our system performance committee meetings as well. So you're more than welcome to also join us for that if you want to look into that data. It's also used for rating and ranking. So, but I'm not going to cover here because it's not really what I consider a system measure. It is still a measure within that funding source. So measure number 5 is the number of people who become newly homeless. So people who have not been homeless 2 years prior, but are homeless now. And we're looking at how many persons become newly homeless. And then how many of the clients who were served during the reporting year exit to a permanent destination. And for street outreach, it'll be permanent and temporary destinations. Any questions about that?
Iraida, do they have any measure that actually reports when people are homeless for the very first time?
It's not within HUD's measures, but if it's something that you would like us as the HMIS lead to be able to build a report to identify that, that is a report request that can be made, and we can make a custom report of that sort.
Okay, you and I could talk offline about that, I don't want to waste time, but it's just a curiosity that I have about the people that are actually for the very first time ever homeless. So we'll talk. Sure. Thanks.
And with that, just so you're aware, we have a our data goes back to 2012, so within Wisconsin. So it's a good question. So yes, these are HUD specific measures. We can create additional measures within our community to look at. And so happy to do that. Any other questions before I move on?
Iraida, this is Mary Beth.
Yeah.
Is this over time? Is what HUD wanted, or does this change every couple of years, these measures, or?
So that's a really good question. So they started requiring these system performance measures to be reported in 2015. So we do have data going back to the trend of data for the continuous going back, and I'm actually going to kind of switch my slide. And I'm going to throw this in the chat box, but if you want to look at this dashboard will be updated, but you can look at this website here on our ICA website, and you can look at the measures going back to, we have 2017 going forward in our system performance committee for Racine. We also can look back even further than 2017. We just kept the last several years, and we'll be updating this even further. There has been changes based on data standard collection guidance from HUD related to more metrics being added. I think the youth population was added, I think, in 2017. So looking at youth 18 to 24 in programs, they started adding more metrics into there. So it could change over time. There hasn't been a great deal of changes, though, in the metrics, I should say. So
thank you.
No problem. And let me just, before I forget, make sure I throw it in the chat box, the link to that site. I think it's helpful for those who are applying for funding too, to be able to look at that and identify some data that can help you in obtaining more funding, because definitely know that there is a need. So. Any further questions on that? We'll dive into this even more. So. Okay, so local performance targets. So HUD does intend that we use the data to establish targets for the national and competitive purposes, but not only for that purpose, it also is helpful just for us to keep progressing in our process of ending homelessness for our community members. And so HUD is not asking us to measure performance by subpopulations or subsystems. They do want us to look at the entire system and measure that performance. So we don't want to compete against subpopulations. For example, veterans competing against family experiencing homelessness, or chronic against general population. So it is an entire system. And as a continuum that we set local performance targets to account for the unique needs of the homeless population, subpopulations, and circumstances within the community. And so I believe that's done within our rating and ranking committee for funding sources. And so we'll start with measure 1, which is the length of time persons experience or remain homeless. And our desired outcome for this is that we reduce the average and median length of time people experience in homeless. And we're going to look at 1 year of data from the last day of their homelessness. So in this measure, we will be looking at, and I'll try to break down some of these acronyms that we have. It will be looking at clients who enter into emergency shelter. We do not have a safe haven. So when you see ES, that means emergency shelters. Racine does not have a safe haven program. So anywhere you see SH, ignore that. We have an agency named Safe Haven, but that Safe Haven is considered an emergency shelter for unaccompanied minors. And then we're also going to include emergency shelters with transitional housing. And when we look at that measure 1, we're looking at the time clients are experiencing homelessness during the reporting range, as well as any time prior to that continues their homelessness through this reporting period. So when we look at average number of days, we're looking at the total number of days divided by the total persons experiencing homelessness during that reporting period. All right, so for measure number 1, we will see that here is measure number 1, persons who are in emergency shelter. We're going to look at the universe of persons in emergency shelter between the 2 fiscal years, 2021 to 2022. We will see that from October of 2020 till September of 2021, we had 297 individuals being served in an emergency shelter setting in Racine County. And then when we came into October 1st of 2021 until September 30th of 2022, 613 clients were experiencing homelessness in emergency shelter settings. So a drastic increase between those 2 years. And then when we look at the average length of time someone was experiencing homelessness in a shelter, we can see during the prior fiscal year, we had 169 days that they were experiencing homelessness on average. Whereas this last reporting period, it went down to 80 days. So 169 days equals a little over 5 months of homelessness, going down to less than 3 months. So we dropped our length of time people were experiencing homelessness between the 2 federal fiscal years by 89 days. That is a tremendous difference. So meeting that goal was achieved here at least by decreasing on the average. Then when we're looking at median length of time people are experiencing homelessness, this is looking at the median. For the prior fiscal year was 61 days. In the reporting period that was just submitted, we have 43 days on median, making a difference of 18 days that clients were experiencing homelessness. And that is just for shelter. So questions related to that? Metric 1.2 is including transitional housing projects in that same universe of population. So we know that transitional housing projects allow for clients to stay in the transitional program for up to 24 months. And so we expect that having transitional housing participants included in this measure will make the length of stay longer. So you will see that, but it also includes the an additional set of persons being considered homeless. And so it increased from 366 persons to 677 persons experiencing homelessness between the 2 fiscal years. And then the difference in average came down to 82 days difference between the 2 fiscal years on average. And then for median, it dropped by 25 days between the 2 fiscal years for median length of time homelessness. So with transitional housing participants included, we are at 50 days on median that clients are experiencing homelessness. We could move on to measure. Oh, was I going to get a question? Okay. Now we'll look at measure number 2, and we're going to be looking at the extent to which persons who exit homelessness to permanent housing destinations, the percentage that return to our homeless system. So again, our desired outcome is that we reduce the percentage of persons who return to homelessness from 2 years prior being in a permanent destination. So we'll be looking at more project types here. We're going to be looking at clients served in a street outreach project, which will be identified as SO. Those that are served in an emergency shelter, those in transitional housing, and persons in permanent housing. Now, did they exit to a permanent destination during the 2 years prior to this reporting period? And then if they did, what was the rate of return broken down by different timeframes within the 2-year range. So, all right, so this is the graph of the data. So we will see that in total, we had 246 clients in the 2 years prior to October 1st of 2021 that exited to a permanent destination from these project types. And then 31 clients returned from that 246 that went to a permanent destination. 31 clients returned to homelessness within 2 years, making the rate of homelessness reoccurrence at 13%. This is an improvement from the prior year. I believe the prior year's returns was higher than 13. It was either 15% or 18. I think that's generally the range that we've been within in Racine County. You can also look at the measures as when they exit to permanent destinations, did they return within 6 months to a homeless setting? So did they return to an emergency shelter situation within 6 months of leaving any project type? And we had 12 clients that did leave within the 6-month range, bringing that to a 5% return rate. 3 clients returned within the 6 to 12-month range. And then 16 clients returned within 13 to 24 months, bringing that to a 7% range. One thing to keep in mind in regards to the data for the system performance measure calculations here is that this does look at individual persons. So if there are households with multiple people in there, each one is considered a person. So that's just something to keep in mind. And we could see the lowest return rate was within transitional housing projects. Very low rate for the emergency shelters. The clients who exited 2 years prior to that reporting rate, recurring into homelessness within October of 2021 till September of 2022. Street outreach has a smaller population, so they had the highest rate, but the smallest population. So. Any questions about that? I'll keep moving. If you do have questions and need me to back up, just blurt out, or if somebody's reading the chat, please feel free to kind of chime in for me. I'd be happy to address any questions. All right, we're looking at measure number 3, the number of persons homeless. There are 2 metrics within this measure. We are our desired outcome, again, is to reduce the number of persons who are experiencing homelessness. So measure number 3.1 does not come from HMIS. It is the measure that encompasses unsheltered clients as well as those who are experiencing homelessness in our domestic violence emergency shelters and transitional housing projects. So this is the big effort that's done in January every year. So we'll look at that measure, compare those counts against the prior year. And then measure 3.2 will only look at the clients that were served and data was collected within HMIS for an emergency shelter and a transitional housing project during the reporting year. So the measure 3.2 will not include the annual count for the unsheltered or clients in domestic violence. And here is the data in regards to, we're looking at January of 2021 point in time count compared to January of 2022 point in time count. As you know, we just did a point in time count in January of 2023. That data has not been officially submitted yet, so that is why it's not included in this report yet. So this will be, the January data will be in the next reporting of system performance measures. The universe of total unduplicated clients did increase between the two fiscal years. We increased by 48 clients experiencing homelessness, from 145 to 193 in total. Shelter increased by 33 persons. We do not have a safe haven project. Transitional housing increased by 18 on the night of point in time. So in regards to total sheltered clients being in transitional or emergency shelter, we increased by 51 persons experiencing homelessness on the last Wednesday of January, but we decreased in the number of persons unsheltered between those two January point in time counts from 2021 to 2022 by 3 persons. Then we'll look at measure number 3.2, the annual counts of clients in sheltered in HMIS. This is the total number of clients from fiscal year of 2021 to fiscal year of 2022. We increased by 313 clients being served in emergency shelter and transitional as unduplicated. There could be a duplication of clients between these individual tables here, but this is the unduplicated count here. So in emergency shelters, we increased by 316 clients experiencing homelessness, decreased by 1 client in transitional housing projects.
Iraida, can I ask a quick question on that?
Absolutely.
How does that increase from fiscal year 2021 to 22? How does that increase compared to previous years? Is that increase of 313 typical for us, or much higher than usual, or lower than usual?
Looking at the data during our system performance committee meeting, the fiscal year 2021 was a big decrease in the number of people experiencing homelessness. We think the shelter decompression and the diversion efforts and the stay at home and the eviction moratorium all kind of played into that. There was very strong diversion efforts during that time. And then I believe I'll let Holly speak to the diversion efforts changing in shelters when the health, what is it called? I'm sorry, Holly. Go ahead and say.
The stay-at-home order. So what we're looking, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Sorry, I don't have much of a voice. What we're looking at is we're looking at a number of different things that have all collided at once. So it's not just one factor, and I need to stress that. Part of this is we had some people whose families allowed them to stay in place during the COVID situation, who were then asked to leave once the COVID situation started to resolve itself. We had a significant increase in the number of families that found themselves homeless. And we're still trying to get our heads wrapped around that, but we think it's got something to do with the eviction moratorium being lifted, the stay-at-home orders being lifted, but also this is when we began to see a problem with housing. As housing became more critical, I guess the critical shortage, rents began to go up, evictions began to increase, and more families found themselves on the street. So if you have a family of 12, which is, I hate to say, not 100% unusual, we've been seeing a lot more families with like 6, 7, 8. And like I said, we just had a family of 12 here not too long ago. So because each one of those people, as Iraida said, is counted as a person, we're not talking about just households here, we're talking about persons. So those numbers go up too. It's the housing shortage is pretty critical right now. And in many cases, landlords are requiring for security deposits 1, 2, sometimes 3 months rent as security deposits. People can't afford to do that. And so they're finding themselves, instead of being able to locate another apartment, when they're asked to leave one place, they just find themselves homeless until they can get in a position where they can get the help to get housed, where they can get some help with these security deposits and first month's rent and stuff like that. So there's just a lot of factors that are playing into this significant increase, and it's really hard to say exactly how this trend is going to look in a year or two. There's still a lot of factors that we have to watch how it plays out. I think I'm done.
Can I chime in?
Yeah, absolutely, Scott.
Sure. Just on the point in time count, just to highlight what Iraida was saying, fiscal year 2021 was the lowest point in time count we ever had in Racine by far. So it was really an anomaly in terms of how low it was during the pandemic. And fiscal year 2022 in the point in time count was more like what would be a typical point in time count for Racine. I think what you'll see next year when we look at this year's point in time count is up again, almost 50 over what we had last year. And that's probably a bigger concern than the jump from 2021 to 2022.
Right. And I think, let me jump in here and say too, that another issue that goes with landlords asking for higher security deposits, they're also making a requirement of you have to have double or triple the amount of monthly income to cover the rent. So they're looking at, some people might be on a fixed income, they might get a housing voucher. Housing vouchers aren't counted towards income. So if you have zero income or you have zero earned income, but you have a disability check coming in and it's lower than the amount that they say you should be able to make, your income isn't high enough for you to get into the place, even though your rent is based on your income and covered by, say, a Section 8 voucher. So we have some issues there as well. And then housing, we do have housing available, but you know, it has to be fit for human habitation, and not all the places will fit that description. So there are a lot of issues, a lot of concerns that are fitting.
Let me chime in again too to add to that, Teresa, that the landlords can afford to be a little bit more choosy. Mm-hmm. And so in some cases, we're having problems placing people that have felonies on their records, placing people that have prior evictions or several prior evictions. Beforehand, when we had landlords that would be like, well, I got to rent this apartment, so I'll take a chance on this person. There's competition to get these good quality, better quality apartments. So the landlords could afford to be a little bit more choosy.
Yeah.
So that plays into it as well.
The look back time period on even bankruptcies or evictions is extended. So you could go 10 to 15 years since you've had a bankruptcy. You may have had that declared and you may be in the black. You may have all your bills paid. You've been doing well for the last 8 years, but because 10 years ago you had a bankruptcy on your file, they will count that against you. So there's a lot of different things that are going on that are out of the control of what we can do with placing people into housing. And this is not restricted to Racine. This is not unique to Racine. I hear this when I'm at the state meetings. It's statewide, it's nationwide, unfortunately.
Can I ask a question? This is Kathy with the RP. Within these numbers, are there numbers that include people, I think Holly mentioned bankruptcy, when they lose their homes, for, tax foreclosure?
These numbers are gonna identify people who are served in an emergency shelter, so it's not gonna look at just that what caused them to come into homelessness. That's not what the system performance measures say.
Okay,
we do have the ability to have look at where clients came prior to actually coming into homelessness, but that wouldn't be included in our system performance measures. But it won't indicate if they came from their a unit that they owned into homelessness. It won't say why did they come from a unit that they owned.
But you'd be
If
able,
that makes sense.
no, it
yes.
does. It does, but you'd be able to find that information.
Just not why they came from.
No, I totally
owned unit. Yep, but yep.
Okay.
If they reported it,
situation. Yep. If they came from their own apartment or they came from their own home, those are two different fields. Yep.
Okay.
And remember, some of it hinges on what the client is willing to disclose too about why they entered homelessness.
True. I would never want to pry at all. Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Okay, we'll move to the next. Thank you for the comments and sharing amongst everyone. We'll look at measure number 5, number of persons who become homeless for the first time. Again, we want to decrease the number of persons who become homeless for the first time. We're going to look at 24 months prior to them entering the homeless system during this reporting period that we talked about. How many were in a shelter setting within the 24 months prior, and then how many were not will be our newly counted. So it's not going to look at clients who were newly homeless ever, as Holly had asked, but again, that can be a local measure that we want to look at. Doesn't have to just be within system performance. What HUD has is programmed measures, and so, but today we're just going to be focusing on that range. And here's the data for that. So we'll look at between the comparison between fiscal year of 2021 and fiscal year of 2022 and the difference. So the increase of clients in an emergency shelter or transitional housing project for Racine County. 312 clients were served in 2021, or 611 in 2022, making the difference of 299. In fiscal year 2022, 85 of the 611 clients were in an emergency shelter, transitional housing, or even a permanent housing project within the 24 months prior to this reporting period of fiscal year 2022, making it 526 clients were newly homeless, had not had an emergency shelter, transitional housing, or permanent housing program enrollment within the 24 months prior to them entering into the system. So 526 clients were newly homeless. So the majority of the clients are not clients who have his long and continued and repeated homeless episodes. This is an increase of 309 persons newly homeless from the prior year. So any questions? And then this is also looking at that same population, but including permanent housing programs. So 607 clients were served in emergency shelter, transitional housing, or permanent housing projects. 112 were previously in a shelter, transitional, or permanent housing project within the 24 months prior to entering the project. During this reporting period, 558 clients were newly homeless during fiscal year 2022. And then we're going to look at the rate of successful placement from street outreach to permanent or temporary situations. And so we'll look at the universe of those who exited a street outreach project in fiscal year, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Fiscal year 2022, 77 clients exited our street outreach project. 32 of the clients that were in contact with street outreach left to either a temporary situation or institutional destination. And so getting them off the streets and getting them either into an emergency shelter or staying with family, friends, or even the hospital is counted as a positive situation for street outreach clients. And then of the 77 clients who exited street outreach, 10 of the clients went directly into permanent housing destinations. And again, this is of the clients who reported where they went. So not all clients indicate where they went. So there could be clients that we just don't have that data for where they exited to. So they would be counted as a negative rate just because there isn't an ability to count those. 55% success rate in exiting clients to permanent and temporary situations. So an increase by 6% in successfully exiting clients from a street outreach project. Street outreach is the only project type within HUD's program and specifications that allow for getting credit as positive for temporary institutional settings. In their metric, when we look at other population or project types, it will only include the permanent destination. Until I'll move straight into that one. We're looking at successful placements in or retention of permanent housing. We're going to look at emergency shelters, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing clients who exited, and those who did not move into housing from a rapid rehousing program or permanent supportive housing program. We have 530 clients who were in this universe during that, this universe of the reporting period, not the universe of the United States or the universe of the world, but 530 persons were served in that project. 226 exited to a permanent destination, bringing our success rates of clients at 43%, decreased by 13% in success rate from that project type. Again, a larger population being served between the 2 fiscal years. So going to a temporary situation from shelter, transitional housing, or permanent housing programs does not count as a positive situation. Although some may beg to differ that it's better than continuing to experience homelessness or going to a negative destination like the streets. So. And then when we look at the population of those who leave our permanent housing projects and move into permanent housing, keeping them in their permanent housing projects, our success rate is at 98%. We can see the difference in population is that we served 19 less clients in these projects in fiscal year 2022. And those who exited, looks like there's a difference of 2 clients here as well as 2 clients here because of it's basically the same rate, except that when we round, it gave us a negative 1% success rate, 98% successfully retaining their permanent housing units or exiting to a permanent housing. 2 clients that were not able to retain permanent housing, or we did not know where they went when they left permanent housing. Historically, we're just about every year at 98 to 99% in clients retaining their permanent housing or exiting to a permanent housing destination. So this is generally our trend of our exits. So this speaks to having case management and wrapped around our clients who are receiving services generally is successful. So high rate of success in being able to lease units with our participants. So that is the end of this presentation. I do have some source data here. I do want to close for sure with inviting those who have interest in looking at this data more to let us know if you are interested in being on our System Performance Committee. Scott and I chair that committee. The next meeting will be a hybrid meeting. It'll be at Hope Center, but can also be virtual. It'll be April 7th at 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. If you are interested, please reach out to Scott Metzel or myself. And if you have an interest in being there, we dive deeper into this and we start looking at much more reasons why maybe the data has changed and try to come up with some thoughts on how to improve, whether it's policies or procedures or funding, and try to find gaps in our services to help coordinate resources that we do have or resources that we'll be obtaining. So any questions? And I put in the chat box the link to our ICA's website for the system performance measures as well. So feel free to look at that. It will be updated with this data as well. So thank you all. I appreciate your interest and your questions. This was fantastic.
Thank you, Iraida. I want to, before we get into the sharing part, I want to mention that we're considering going to a hybrid for our next meeting in May. So it's a possibility of meeting at Ascension, but we're not certain yet. Don't quote me on that, but everybody needs to watch there, and you will definitely get more notice for this next one, definitely. And I'm just curious if you can put in the chat whether you would be interested in meeting in person or if you'd rather do the Zoom. I'm just curious to see what kind of a space we would need to look for people. So if you could kind of put in the chat, would you rather stay online or would you rather go to in person? I know there's reasons for both. Staying on Zoom allows people to squeeze it into other, between other meetings, and there's not the travel. And then meeting in person though, people want to get out and start talking and seeing human beings. So this is interesting. Everything's coming through at one Zoom. Zoom. Interesting. Which is fine. We might be able to do, like I said, we'll try to do a hybrid of them and see how that will work. Also, any suggestions on any topics you would like to hear at future meetings? I'm interested in that. And let's see. I know that one other one, if you're funded through the CoC, if you haven't heard this yet, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion work group, and we are seeking diversity, anti-discrimination statements, policies, whatever you use, if they're in your bylaws, if they're in your staff, employee booklets, and if you have something special that you show for clients or that you have clients sign, what we're going to be doing is looking through them. We're not going to be telling you what to write. Our goal is, right now when we do rating and ranking, we ask for percentages of how many people do you have on your board from each of these different groups with the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, yes. And so that's kind of a check off the box, but we believe that we need to move beyond that now and start investigating what's going on. And our goal will be to look at everybody what everybody has. So HUD does ask us, what are you doing to ensure this, or assure that things are moving along? And we would like to say that we have actually read what people have, we know what people have, and then our goal will be to draft up something that will be a larger statement for CoC members that you can sign on to, and it would cover, in MOUs would basically say, we know that agencies have their own statements, but they also agree to sign on to the statement that we have from the CoC. And that's what we're looking to do with that group. Let's see, also, I am interested in renewing the group that met with Sharon Peasy, the staff case managers. I need to know if any of you are interested in that, and I need to get names and get that started. It would be run the same way as far as I would be leading it. It would be confidential. People would not, what's said in the room would stay in the room, and give me a good idea of what case managers are looking for as far as help, guidance. You can vent your frustrations, whatever you need. I'd like to start that up again. I need names and emails of people who would like to attend that. And let's see, is there anything else that I wanted to mention? I think that's it. I'm going to, before we pass it to everybody else, Jory, are you still here? I can't see your name. Is Jory?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
I'm here.
Jory, you wanna talk about your fundraiser? Let me put it on a share and go ahead and mention it.
Park High School has decided to choose WRC to host a fundraiser. So it's all ran by Park. It will be, oh man, Denise knows where it's at. Where is it at, Denise?
I've got it up on the screen.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so it's at Sorry. Denise was the main communication for this. So they're holding a pasta dinner in our honor, and all proceeds will be, after the cost of the meal, will be donated to WRC. So if you guys can share this, that would be awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just share it. And if you want to come, that would be great to see you guys there. Denise and myself will for sure be there. So
great. Okay.
They're fine, I promise. They're just playing.
Okay. Any, we still haven't heard about the funding from the last application to the HUD that we wrote. We're still waiting. We're still keeping fingers crossed. So, any others? Any other sharing? Or is everybody looking at the clock going, "Ooh, we're going to get out early today"?
Can I say something here, Teresa?
Sure.
So Seth Raymond from Hospitality Center. So many of you know that I am departing the Hospitality Center on March 24th. I've been called to a church up in Milwaukee, St. Paul's, Milwaukee. So I will be leaving the Hospitality Center in really good hands. Carl Fields, who has been with us for 6 years as our Director of Community Engagement, will be the interim kind of on the ground person in charge of operations, really as he has been for quite some time. Any kind of organizational matters as far as grants, kind of bigger picture things should be directed to our board, but there's a online form on our website if you need to get in touch with somebody from our board. And yeah, but you know, beyond the technical stuff, I just wanted to thank everybody for your welcome of me in these past 6 years at the Hospitality Center, and especially your support as we moved from a difficult situation with kind of city and neighbors as far as just having a kind of a legal conundrum on our hands to moving through the conditional use permit process. Certainly want to thank the city also for helping us, reconcile that issue so that we can serve people 5 days a week here at the hospitality center. And then those that have supported us and our guests, especially along the way. It's been a real joy to be here in Racine and really kind of learn as I grew, kind of how an organization might grow as well. So thank you to all of you who helped contribute to that. One just organizational note about the hospitality center is we actually just started in the beginning of February, requiring guests, volunteers, and staff, so absolutely everybody who comes in, to use one of these nice little these little tags or a wallet card, kind of like a library card, to scan when they come into the hospitality center, and it's attached to a client record, which has really basic demographic information, basically the information that United Way asks for. So it's things like gender and age, ethnicity. And what that's done for us is really given us a much more detailed picture of who comes to the hospitality center. And so we have some really great data now over the last 2 months of who comes to see us. And I think the top line item for me is that we've had 400 guests and volunteers and staff get these cards since February 1st. So that's an incredible number of people. And about 18% of those people report being either unsheltered or an emergency shelter, with another 30% reporting being, living with family or friends, so doubled up. And then the remainder being housed in some way. So I really look forward to in the future being able to have the hospitality center continue that data collection and really be able to share that to our community to help us understand better, not just homelessness, but also kind of the impacts of poverty within the community, and see good trends there. So I think that's it for me. So thanks everybody.
Seth, I want to tell you that you've been a great partner. We're really going to miss you. Thank you for everything that you've done to support Halo and all the other agencies throughout the community, and particularly those that are more vulnerable in our community. I have one quick question. Did you get a lot of pushback from your clients about those cards?
No, actually, like, most people are asking for them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so they see people using them. We learned after the first 3 days giving them out that we need to give people lanyards so that they can have it around their neck so that it doesn't get lost as much. And so we've actually see a lot of people actually around the city now with our cards on their lanyards. So no, it's been overwhelmingly positive. We have one person that has so far refused, but I mean, 1 out of 400 is pretty darn good.
That's a doggone good record. Did you do like any incentives with it? Is like there an incentive for them to have it, or?
No. Just, we started out by demonstrating with our staff and guests, and that's an important part. Like, when you see our data, you'll see like 11% of the people that we serve are homeowners. A good portion of that number are volunteers, but we really wanted to make it clear that everybody that comes into our space is served by us, guests, volunteers, staff alike. We all eat together, we all take part in the services we provide. And so I think leading kind of through that example is important. So if you come to the hospitality center, we will certainly ask all of you also to get a card and become one of us.
Seth, does that track people by their names so that you're able to unduplicate?
Yeah. It's attached to like an individual record.
Good.
Yep.
Really interesting.
Well, thank you, Seth, for everything you've done.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Shorter commute?
A much shorter commute, yes. Yeah.
Very good. Anybody else have any events coming up? Any comments they want to share? Again, in the chat, if you want to put in what you'd like other topics for me to cover, for us to bring in speakers, please put them in there.
I just have a comment to make. So I'm going to have a 1-bedroom affordable rent apartment, going to be available May 1st. Hopefully, I'm looking at everybody. I believe everybody knows what we do. We don't look at evictions. We don't look at bankruptcies. We don't look at credit reports. We want to house those who are coming out of homelessness to get back on their feet. So I believe it's going to be available May 1st. It's located on Washington Avenue in Uptown. It's on the second floor of a commercial building. So if anyone knows anyone or any couple, please email me.
Very good. I'm sure you'll be inundated with emails. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. And I'm hearing nothing else. No other words, no other messages. Okay. I'm not going to keep you any longer. And I've got your, oh, Jenny says HUD expects NOFO awards by the end of March. Oh, well, what year? Awesome. We're looking forward to that. Okay. So can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Holly.
Okay. And if you abstain or you just plain don't want to leave, okay. But if you're in favor, just go ahead and sign off. Bye, everybody.
Bye.